Sometimes I make a vintage recipe that I think will be disgusting, and then it turns out to be delicious. And other times, I taste a retro dish that I imagine will be wonderful, then have to spit it out because it tastes so foul. Today's vintage recipe, entitled Grape Nut Rennet Custard, is the former. I found it in one of my vintage cookbooks from 1949 and was intrigued because I had never heard of rennet custard before. I knew rennet was used to make cheese, but custard? So weird. It turns out that rennet-based custard is more commonly known as junket and apparently has been around forever. Originally flavored with spices and rose water, it was a big hit with the early medieval crowd, but it fell out of favor when the Tudors acquired the crown. Junket was brought to America in 1878 when Christian Hansen moved his rennet company from Denmark to New York State, which was the center of the US cheese industry. In 1911, Mr. Hansen introduced a sweetened and flavored powder that was essentially the junket custard we know today. The heyday of junket custard was from around the 1930s through the 1960s. It was lauded as both an elegant dessert and a health product that was given to kids when they were sick because it was sweet and easily digested. Junket is still sold today, though it can be difficult to find. I was only able to acquire these junket pills at my local Whole Foods, but not the junket vanilla pudding mix from the original recipe. The good news is the junket tablets came with a recipe for vanilla custard, and then I simply added the grape nuts. Here's how it's done. Begin by preparing your individual dessert dishes. I decided to use my great-grandmother's teacups because I thought they would look pretty. Split 2/3 of a cup grape nuts between the 4 containers and then set aside. To make the custard, you begin by pouring 2 cups of whole milk into a pot and then add 3 tablespoons of sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Turn the heat on low and let the milk come to 100 degrees, which is just slightly warmer than your body heat. Meanwhile, dissolve 1 junket tablet in 1 tablespoon of cold water. Once the milk is at the right temperature, pour the dissolved rennet into the milk and give it a quick stir. Pour the milk into the 4 cups and then let it sit for at least 10 minutes before moving it to the fridge to cool for at least 2 hours. While your junket is cooling, you can make the cherry sauce that goes on top. In a saucepan, melt a 1/4 cup of butter. Next, mix in 2 tablespoons of flour and then 1 cup of red cherry juice. Cook until the sauce thickens and then add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, a 1/4 cup of sugar, and a few drops of almond extract. Chill until it's time to serve with the junket custard. I like to spoon a bit of the cherry sauce on top of the custard and then sprinkle a few grape nuts as a garnish. Okay, I have a confession to make. Normally, I wait until I'm on camera before I taste the vintage recipe because I want you guys to see my authentic first reaction. This time, however, I felt like I needed to taste the custard first because I had never had rennet custard, and I thought it was going to curdle the milk into sort of a gross kind of cottage cheesy thing. However, this ended up being a really smooth and light and creamy dessert. Very good. And of course, you've got the grape nuts, just added some flavor, and then the cherry topping. Surprisingly delicious. Because the rennet powder was a new to me thickening agent, I thought it would be fun to make it modern by playing around with a different thickening product you might not have heard of before called agar-agar. Agar-agar is a gelatinous substance derived from seaweed. It is most commonly used as a vegetarian or vegan gelatin replacement. There are 3 different forms of agar-agar, but the 2 most common are powdered or flaked. I decided to do a riff on the medieval junket by using spices and rose water. But instead of making a cow milk-based custard, I'm gonna make it modern by using coconut milk and then serve it with a dark sweet cherry sauce as inspired by the junket dessert. In a pan, begin to warm up 1 can of coconut milk with 1 can of coconut cream. Next, you're gonna add 1/3 cup white sugar, 20 cloves, 6 cardamom pods, and 1 stick of cinnamon. Bring it up to a boil and then turn down the heat and let simmer for around 5 minutes. Turn off the heat and let the spices steep for at least 1 hour or more. The longer you let it steep, the bolder the flavors. When you're ready to make the custard, begin by straining the milk and then discard the spices. In a pot, pour 1/4 cup of the spiced coconut mixture and add 1½ tablespoons of agar-agar. Stir over a low heat until it bubbles and then add the rest of the milk. Bring to a boil and then turn off the heat and add 1/2 to 1 tablespoon of rose water and a small bit of pink food coloring, and then pour into your serving dishes. I decided to make the custard pink for 2 reasons. The first is because pink is my signature color. And the second is because it's reminiscent of the rose water that we're using as a flavoring. If pink isn't your color, just leave it out. That's okay. Let the custards cool to room temperature, then place in the fridge to chill. In the meanwhile, you can make your dark cherry sauce. In a small bowl, stir together 1 tablespoon of lime juice with 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and set aside. In a small pot, add 8 ounces of fresh or frozen pitted cherries, 1/4 cup brown sugar, and 1/4 cup water. Bring it up to a boil and then add the cornstarch and lime mixture. Bring it back up to a boil and then turn off the heat and let it cool for a few minutes. Once it's cool enough to safely continue, pour the mixture into a blender and blend until smooth. Serve the sauce on top of the coconut spice custard and garnish with toasted pistachios. I thought the Junket custard was good, but this is decadent. The coconut cream is so smooth. And then of course, you've got that hint of the different spices that we used. And then right at the end, a little bit of that rose perfume, which goes perfectly with the black cherry topping. And then you get a little bit of crunch from the pistachios that you put on top. If you didn't tell anybody, they would never guess in a million years that this was vegan. Just as you can't judge a book by its cover, so too can you not judge a recipe, even a vintage one, before you actually taste it. Both the vintage Junket and the modern coconut spice custard are perfectly delicious. If you liked any of the home goods in today's video, you can find them at my online store, retrodepot.co. Just click the link in the description box below. I knew rennet is used to make cheese, but custard? So weird. Can I keep that incredulous look on my face, or should I then go to my smile? While your junket is cooling, it just sounds funny, your junk. Okay, is it agar-agar? Agar-agar. Medieval. Blah. Okay. My southern accent's terrible though, so it's like a joke. But I do a good cockney, I do. Done. That's gonna be the title. Vegan, decadent, delicious, done.